Hi, how's it going, everybody? My name is Christopher Hemenway, and I'm with Hemenway Construction Management. Today, we're going to talk about the role of a project manager in light of working for a commercial construction management firm. So, a project manager, we talked about a foreman as being the tip of the spear of kind of the battle to build the project out with the soldiers, getting the construction production done. Well, the project manager in that scenario would be kind of like the war strategist in the war room. They are responsible for logistics, they're responsible for capital, for resources, the deployment of resources at the right time, and they're also responsible for risk mitigation and avoiding litigation and things like that. So the role of a project manager is extremely important. It's definitely not for everybody. It requires a certain personality type and a certain drive and passion for the work that goes into being a project manager. However, for the right people, it can be a very rewarding job, both financially as well as in the work that you get to see and the massive accomplishment that goes into getting through a successful construction project. So we like to say that the project manager is the CEO of the project. Anyone in construction knows that each project is unique. It presents its own unique circumstances, challenges, specifications, personalities. So the project manager really is the CEO running the business of that project. That includes documentation, planning, finances, schedule, everything, soup to nuts, communication with the project ownership team and design team and the project production team in the field. While the super owns the work production and kind of the quality control of the actual work, the PM owns the dollars, the documents, the project delivery on the back end. We like to say that the role is rooted in the wisdom of forethought, because a project manager has to see the project from pre-construction, from ordering long lead time items ahead of time, all the way to what's going to happen at project turnover and warranty claims. And all the way at every step along the way, they have to know what the common pitfalls are, what certain trade subs are going to stumble or thrive at, and they have to kind of plan those things out and know that they will happen and be ready to respond as they do and catch them ahead of time. As a project manager at Hemenway Construction, our mission is to ensure the financial health and contractual integrity of every project in our client's portfolio. The project manager is the strategic architect of the construction process. They're the gap between the budget and the build, ensuring that there's a mutual benefit achieved between the client, the subs, and Hemenway Construction. Construction a lot of times, and one of my goals in this industry is to create win-win-win scenarios. A lot of times from day one, it's a contentious situation because every party kind of has a different goal and they become competitors, and the project manager's goal is to go out across all the teams and see what they need and what their desires are to make it a successful project, and kind of ensure that each party is doing what they need for that to happen. It's a delicate balance. First responsibility, financial stewardship. So when you're running a construction project, $5 million, $10 million, $150 million are at stake, you're talking once again about a business. Budgets are, extremely fragile to conditions out there in the world, and the project manager has to just be an absolute diligent steward of the finances of the project. There's many resources at the fingertips of a project manager, such as project accounting, project accountants, and different softwares to track creep in bought out subcontracts versus actual spend, change orders, things of that nature. However, it is at the forefront of the project manager's job to keep track of the budget and the finances of the project. They also need to know how to properly implement and deploy the finances of the project, because there's all different types of timelines. You have pressure from trades and vendors coming up to get money, whether that's ahead of when they should or otherwise, and then you have the owner, architect, owner's rep, pushing to make sure that they're not giving away too much money too quickly. And the project manager's job is to balance those and ensure that they're being on top of subs so that they're not overbilling or underbilling. And then they have to go back and put pressure on the ownership team and say, hey guys, we're good here. We've shown our due diligence. We've done what we need to do in the past, and we need to get as much money deployed to the project as quickly as possible. Like I said, the PM they own the budget, they own negotiating out subcontractor buyout, they own kind of negotiating those margins and making sure that there's a cushion in case anything goes wrong. Then they are responsible for cost tracking on a regular basis to make sure there's no profit creep or unexpected leaks in the budget. And they're responsible for that cash flow, like I said, whether it's the recs going to the ownership team in a timely manner, making sure that there's not too much red line, and making sure if there are any adjustments, it's done in the quickest and fastest manner possible. Another thing with a project manager is managing responses. So a lot of times in construction, you're going to have a lot of different requests for information, and different members of the teams are going to push back on you and ask for information and throw the ball back and forth. Well, the project manager has to get comfortable with being a bit of a bother, and ruthless follow-up with a smile, totally professional, totally cordial, but you kind of gotta bother people to a certain extent where it might not be polite if something was due yesterday to follow up maybe 2-3 times a day, the following day and the following day, until you get that response. Because at the end of the day, the project manager is trying to, like I said in the beginning, make all the parties of this project's goals happen. And sometimes people will inadvertently, just because they have a lot of other things going on, sabotage their own successful fulfillment of a construction project. And some examples of that are trades, subs, providing their submittal package. So sometimes they'll provide a submittal package that's insufficient. PM will review it, say, hey, listen, you're missing a few things. And they'll drag their feet, or for whatever reason they're out doing other things, they don't provide that information in a timely manner. And what that's going to do is going to hold up the project schedule. It's going to result in untimely payments. It's going to result in just overall cost increase that may not be covered by change orders because they are the responsible party. Now, flip that around, and the project manager looking at, say, an architect, they may submit their submittal package. Architect may be taking too long to review. They have to follow up, say, hey, I need these reviews. Or the architect may send out a revise and resubmit. The project manager then has to diligently get that revised in accordance with what's needed and get that back to the architect, put the ball back in the responsible party's court, and then once again, when it's due, follow up. So it's a constant game of hot potato, and the project manager just has to be like, no disrespect, but I'm here to help you make sure that this project is successful, and that's what you want. And in order for me to do that, you got to give me what I need. So that's in a nutshell, that's what a project manager does. Going to contract, I was talking about earlier the notice of long lead time. This is big, especially if you have unique items. I mean, right now, passive home windows, switch gear, depending on the size, any special item on the project, you're going to want, the project manager is going to want to know that, hand it over from the project estimating and pre-construction team, and get right on top of that. And once again, sometimes it's a difficult process to get money released before construction production starts, so that's something they need to be diligent on. Change order management is huge. So every project is going to have change orders. Sometimes change orders are for time. A lot of times they involve money. Sometimes they're for increases. Sometimes they're for decreases. And the project manager has to be, once again, extremely diligent in managing both expectations up front so that everybody knows, but also strict adherence to contractual obligations, because change orders is one of those things in a construction project where without good communication, we've all seen it, guys do some work, oh, this is going to be an extra couple $1,000, what do you think? They get a verbal approval, they go ahead and do it, ownership team doesn't approve it, and you get into trouble. That's kind of like an informal way, but if you could imagine that expanding out across improper approvals, no paper trail, missing communication in writing, it can add up quick and it can turn into big legal problems, both for the general contractor, the construction manager, the trade subs, and the owner. So any changes, they have to flow up to the project manager from the construction production team. Foreman is the eyes and ears. He's checking, seeing if anything's off. Super is managing production, looking at coordination, seeing any pinch points. Something comes up that was unseen, immediately that goes up to the project manager as a potential change order. The project manager then has to put that in, alert everybody's attention that this is an emergency item that needs to be looked at right away, and then once again follow up with communication to everybody involved in that change order and make sure that's responded to in a timely manner. Submittal mastery. Submittals are huge for project managers. What we like to do at Hemenway Construction is the pre-construction and estimating team kind of tease up the submittal package, and when they do their project turnover to the production team, that's the PM's first job. He's looking at the project schedule, he's looking at the budget, and he's preparing the submittal package. Within 10 days of that project turnover, the submittal package is prepared and ready for the architect. So day one, every submittal's there. This ensures, just that we're on top of the process, knowing that there's going to be revised, resubmit, and knowing that even that finished package, that lighting package, that door hardware package may change. We're setting the tone up front. This is what's included. This is what we all understand is going to be used in this project, and it gives ample time for any, potential thoughts or changes on the ownership side to happen immediately, and then the PM to then follow up, make sure if there's a PCO up or down, he's catching it, and we like to just get on top of that, because these are the things, submittals are a thing that will cause massive delays and mismatched expectations if you don't get that right immediately early on in the project. Be comfortable being a bother. I covered that already. Once again, always kind, courteous, and professional, but a diligent steward of the project. Strategic communication. You, as a project manager, you're kind of the go-between between the corporate world, ownership, architects, owners, reps, consultants, and the construction production team. So, the super is kind of your filter for the actual work being done, but you're communicating with all the subs, all the vendors, and you have to speak the language of both worlds and know how to bridge the gap and kind of filter the difference between those two worlds. You're going to be actively working with the super. So once again, the super is more weekly, 3-week look ahead. The super will go over for instance, an owner architect contractor meeting, a weekly OAC meeting. the super's going to say, all right, here's where we're at. This is what's been done. You can see here in the daily logs, X, Y, Z. And then the project manager is going to be responsible for that big master schedule that's up in the construction trailer with all the milestones, making sure that that 3-week look ahead matches with the milestones on the overall project schedule. And that's something that you're going to work hand in hand with the super, the subs, to make sure, give a little, take a little, whatever you go over here, you make up there, and you just work that out. And then if things are progressing slower or quicker, you can then, as the PM, adjust the master schedule and let the whole team know, hey, there's a different target for this milestone date, there's a different substantial completion, et cetera, et cetera. And I like to call it pulling the Band-Aid. You know, if there's bad news, you get it out there quick, explain it, everyone comes to terms with it, and then you move on. If you let these things kind of linger and like, oh, that'll work itself out, that's where you get into problems. So, you know, a PM has to have a lot more technically proficient background. You're going to be working in Excel. You're going to be working in Bluebeam. You're going to be, marking up PDFs. You know, you might have to make notes on drawings. You're going to be working in the project management software. So you're going to have to be technically proficient. And also, what's a good idea nowadays to be a project manager, a successful project manager in construction, is be willing to learn new technologies and constantly be looking for something that's going to make your job easier, more efficient. And that in construction is really where the technology shines, is on the project management, administrative cost accounting side, is where some technologies can really help out, as opposed to like robots building buildings or something like that. Having the eye of a prophet. So this is really something you can't teach. It's kind of like a, very unique developed skill, and it just comes with experience. The more projects you've been on, one thing I like to encourage younger project managers or apprenticing people to become project managers, APMs, go out amongst your peers and, spend some extra time on a job site with trade subs who are your senior, who've been doing it for 30 plus years, and just listen to what they say. A lot of guys will share stories of what worked, what didn't work. This project team was great, everything was good. This project team was a disaster, nightmare. Listen, ask questions, be a sponge and absorb that, because in construction, if you're on the ball, if you're on top of it, you're going to be able to pull little insights and use that to forecast on your job and say, oh, I have this same unique situation that so-and-so told me about. I'm going to watch out for that on this job, and I'm going to save time and money on that. And it's just super important for you to develop that kind of hidden skill of forecasting out pitfalls. High-end diplomacy, once again, this is being comfortable being a bother, but at the end of the day, what they teach in the Lean Construction Management Construction Accelerator program is sometimes your client is going to be your boss, and sometimes your client is going to be your employee, in the fact that you're going to be turning back to them saying, I need these documents, I need this information, I need it by this date, and if not, there's going to be consequences. So, and that could be, time delays, things of that nature. But the roles shift, and you as the PM, once again, you're like the CEO of this project, and you're holding everyone accountable, the people working for the construction management firm, as well as owners and the people owners hired to design and consult on this project. It's a very unique situation to be in, and it holds a lot of authority. You have to be comfortable with, standing in that authority. Education, typically a degree in construction management or some sort of engineering background to give you kind of a high level, like how multiple parts go together. I like to say, there's certifications for people in the field. I think that's, in my mind, the best way to go is to come up as a foreman and come up in the trades and then transfer over to like an APM and then get certifications while working in the field. I think that's the best way, is hands-on in the field experience. Typically 5 to 8 years in one of those roles, like assistant super, assistant PM in larger projects. Obviously, it depends on where you're going, but here at Hemenway, we say between $2 million and $10 million range. You have to be technically proficient, and you have to have a certain character to be a PM. It's a delicate balance. You have to be kind of smart and proficient with the tech, with your numbers, but you have to be comfortable over communicating with people as well. It's a very delicate balance. It's a very unique balance. That's why this position is well paid, and that's why there's not that many people who excel in this position. Here at Hemenway Construction and at other firms, being a project manager is kind of your quickest track to senior level management in a construction company, just because, like I said, you're kind of CEO level aptitude, and then the more success you have, you're kind of naturally going to grow up into that senior management level position with time, as a natural progression. I think that's the quickest way to move up. Construction site supers are typically in the field. After a certain amount of years, they're comfortable being a site super. They can handle more. The guys that's been on the field for decades are somewhat priceless, so they also tend to get a high ticket salary, but it's not as likely for a field licensed super to come in the office and be high level management in the company on the corporate level. So working with us, like I said, we've developed a reputation with our clients and in our market for just being an advocate and being fully transparent and working through problems in a diplomatic manner with our clients. So that is something that you will learn very quickly, whether you work out with this company as a PM or you don't, just based on kind of how those things play out on a project. But that's unique to Hemenway Construction, not necessarily the case across the entire construction industry. So that's it. Construction project manager. I'd say one of the more complicated roles. If that's you, and you have any questions, I'm happy to help out. I'd love to hear from people. I love to share whatever knowledge I may or may not be able to point people in the direction if I don't know. And I hope that this video was helpful in some way, shape, or form. All right, that's it. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.